And that's why you see this look has become quite popular in movies today, because if you think about it, all movies have actors, and all actors have skin tones that fall in the orange part of the color wheel. So all the filmmakers are doing is they're taking the opposite color of those skin tones and injecting it into the lighting and the wardrobe and the set design. And that's really it. I mean, there's not much to it. It's just really thinking through, from a design standpoint, how you can contrast the skin tones, which is orange, by putting cyan or teal, elsewhere.
An example of color contrast used in music videos. Jake and I did a video for this artist, Mike Taylor, and the song's called Electric Church. And one of the performance shots, we took Kino tubes, before stairs, and wrapped them in steel green. And then we also took a source off frame, a sky panel, matched its hue and saturation to steel green as well, and that sort of ended up keying him. So the foreground was all lit with this sort of cooler tone, and then we raked the back wall with the source forward Lico with like a Lee Yellow 101. And if you don't want to remember these gel names, all that you need to take away from this is the cool foreground key and the background hit with hard light that was yellow. And in this instance, we had a warm and cool, and it really made this image stand out. CRI, an easy way to think about it is, we discussed earlier, it's basically how accurate a color is. And this chart is basically holding lights accountable to how accurate they are.
So how is this important? Well, as a DP, as you begin to buy or rent lights, this is something you want to basically understand. How accurate are these lights at producing the colors that they say that they can do? Because there's nothing worse than using an LED that says it can do 5600 Kelvin or 3200 Kelvin than getting on set and turning it to that setting only to find out that the light is actually very inaccurate and it looks very green on your subject's face. Move a source forward Lico on a C-stand to create a very similar effect, because a source forward creates a beam of light similar to these lights that I'm referencing in the ASAP Rocky video. And if you just loosen all the knobs and have one of your electrics just move it and Lico up, you'll see the spotlight sort of move through your frame as it sort of dances around. This is a very quick and DIY way to create movement and dynamic lighting on your set. So haze is a great way to sort of diffuse your light, a great way to lift contrast in your scene, but ultimately a great way to sort of see the directionality in the beams of your light. Now that you know the difference between a hazer and a fogger, here are our favorites. If you're shooting outdoors and you want to create smoke or fog effects for your project, the best way to achieve this is with the lawnmower fogger. This is definitely something you'd rent from a rental house, but this thing is great for fogging out entire areas outside. And it runs off gas, so it doesn't require any extension cables or power. Let me give you this example of this relationship between the Kelvin in camera and the Kelvin of your lights. Say we have our key light set to 4500 Kelvin, and say in camera we have our Kelvin set to 4500 Kelvin. When matching them, the light is going to appear white. It's going to appear on camera, on the monitor, everything will feel very neutral. It's not going to feel too cold, it's not going to feel too warm. They're perfectly in sync with each other. Well, say you wanted this to feel warmer. You could leave your Kelvin in camera set to 4500 Kelvin, and then you could bring this light down, warming it up to 3200 Kelvin. By doing that, you've warmed up your key by adjusting the Kelvin away from where you're balanced in camera. You're walking through the shot with the viewfinder is map out any zones or areas where you will not see. This might be a corner, a closet, an area of the ceiling that's out of frame. These are always good places to start to add lights. But beyond just sort of, sneaking lights in certain areas of your set that are unseen, one of my favorite ways to approach a oneer inside of a house is by using practical lamps. Naturally lamps are going to build in little pockets of light throughout your set. So as your actor or, your subject is walking through your oneer, they're going to get hit with little, patches of light from those practical lamps. And when you are using a practical lamp, try to switch out the bulb to a brighter 250 watt bulb. You can pick these up at most hardware stores, but this is just going to make your lamps brighter, and you can, actually end up keying your subject with these lamps. One of my favorite tips for lighting a oneer is actually leave my key light more neutral. So say my camera's balanced at 4500 Kelvin, I'll typically key with a key light that's actually roughly balanced to what my camera is, so that there's a neutral point. Your eye has something to look at that's not color. And then when you do this, everything else that's color is gonna appear much more vibrant because your eye as a viewer needs to reference something that's not the color to compare the color to. If I just made the key red and the backlight red and everything red, everyone on that side, because this HMI right here, shadow, it bones it. Thank you guys. You could also speed that up. That was pretty hard.
Let me see it. Oh, that's sick. Oh, perfect. What the? Open the door.
The Y comes from the size. If something is bigger, it is going to be softer. If you are going to key me right here, the light will appear softer if it was being sent through a 12 by 12 frame of diffusion versus a 4 by 4 frame of diffusion. So if you just took a 1 by 1 light panel and shined it right at my face, it would appear very harsh. 1 feet by 1 feet is pretty small. But if you actually were to put that 1 by 1 light panel and send it through a 4 by 4 frame, now your light source is 4 feet big. The larger it is, it has a better chance at wrapping around and appearing softer, getting rid of harsh shadows. And then beyond that, if you took that 1 by 1 light panel and sent it through a 12 by 12 frame of diffusion, it's gonna feel incredibly soft. So if you're shooting in a parking garage, an elevator, maybe one of those streets in LA with all the newer sort of street lights, these are gonna appear very green in camera. So to combat that, because you might be in a situation where you can't get rid of them, you gotta use those lights in the shot, opposed to leaning into how green they are, you can actually fix this by adjusting and adding more magenta. So think of tint as a spectrum. Similar to Kelvin, where you have 3200 and 5600, tint you have green, 0, and magenta. The same will happen actually with higher strength ND filters.
Action. Your back. Cool. Cut. Perfect. Good. 10 minutes left till they're all ready. Cool. That shot was gonna be here, right? We're on her here, trying to find through her bag, and they kind of like come off in the background there. So let's just do her reaction to seeing them.